Republican lawmakers have now effectively banned abortion in the state of Kentucky. Now, they did this by overriding the Democratic governor's veto of the legislation. So they initially passed the legislation, and at that point, Governor Andy Beshear is like, nope, I am not in favor of this. So he vetoes it. And at that point, they get back together, the state legislature, and they vote in favor of passing the legislation to such an extent that it overrides his veto, right? You need a certain number of votes to make that happen. Now, let me give you the details on what the legislation entails. The new law, which by the way is now effective, it was effective immediately as soon as they overrode the veto. One of the most restrictive in the nation, imposes limits on medication abortion, requires the cremation or burial of fetal remains, and bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. An exception is allowed if the woman's life is in danger. Wow, they're so kind. But there is no exception for rape or incest. So if you are a woman who has been raped in a state like Kentucky, you will not be able to access an abortion in that state. You will be forced to give birth, to bring that fetus to term. Among the most difficult restrictions to comply with this law is the new rule on fetal remains. The law requires abortion clinics to work with funeral homes to bury or cremate the remains of each aborted pregnancy. To comply with that law, the clinic will probably be forced to hire more people who can help facilitate an elaborate and medically unnecessary burial process for each abortion performed. And the abortion providers in the state do not have the ability to do it. They don't have the resources. But even if they do have the resources, even if they manage to, I don't know, fundraise, find a way to get some sort of, grant from a wealthy lib benefactor, it doesn't matter. None of that matters because turns out funeral homes in the state of Kentucky have no interest in working with abortion clinics. So this is the roundabout way the state of Kentucky has banned abortion. And why did Andy Beshear veto it initially? Well, he says that rape and incest are violent crimes. They are. Victims of these crimes should have options, not be further scarred through a process that exposes them to more harm from their rapists or treats them like the offenders themselves. And again, I just wanna give you the exact numbers to show you how many of these state lawmakers have decided to be part of this manufactured nonsense about abortion in order to distract the people of Kentucky, in order to distract the American people from their inability to do anything of substance to improve the lives of their own constituents. And I'll make that case in a little bit, but here's what we're talking about. Late Wednesday, the Kentucky House voted 76-21. And the Senate voted 31-6 to override the veto. And this 15-week ban is modeled after the 15-week ban in the state of Mississippi, which is something that's been challenged in the courts. The Supreme Court is likely to hear about that case in the summer, but don't get too excited if you're under the assumption that they're actually gonna uphold Roe v. Wade. They have signaled, because of the conservative makeup of the Supreme Court, that they are willing to potentially restrict abortions in this country. So I give you all of that to say, obviously I'm against this. I've been very clear, I've been on the record about that. But I think it's worth taking a look at what really ails the people of Kentucky and how those are the very issues that are consistently ignored. These are the very people who are consistently neglected by Republican lawmakers in the state, okay? So if anyone from Kentucky happens to stumble across this video, I just want you to get to know your lawmakers. In fact, I want you to get to know your state. Because while these goons are specifically focusing all of their attention on this culture war, on this effort to control women's bodies, on this effort to punish women for engaging in sexual activity, there's a lot going on in that state that deserves some attention. So let's get to some of those details. According to data released Wednesday by Kentucky youth advocates, 205,000 children Let me read that again. 205,000 children, more than 20% of the state's youth population, live in a household that earns less than $26,000 a year for a family of 4. And nearly half of Kentucky's children are living in households with annual income below 200% of the federal poverty line. And if you, of course, break it down by demographics, the numbers are much higher when it comes to Black children. 42% of Black children in the state's urban centers of Jefferson and Fayette counties live in poverty. The same is true for Latinx children in Fayette County as well. And they've got a problem with teen pregnancies in the state already. The teen birth rate is insanely high in the state of Kentucky. Let's take a look at that. Wow, 27.3 births per 1,000 teenagers between the ages of 15 to 19. But they want to make that number worse, because I would venture to say they're not in favor of sex ed. They're not in favor of educating teenagers to ensure that they prevent pregnancies. I'm sure they hear all the abstinence only nonsense, which clearly not working in the state of Kentucky. So now they're gonna do away with reproductive rights in the state, make that problem worse. The foster care system in the state of Kentucky is a disaster. Kentucky state lawmakers refused to expand their Medicaid program as part of Obamacare, just to make a point, even though they knew full well that their constituents, that people living in Kentucky who did not have health insurance, were now gonna be denied that expanded Medicaid. They don't care. You think they care? You know what they tried to do recently, just this year? They tried to cut unemployment benefits in a state that is grappling with an insane rate of poverty, not just for adults, but for children. That's what these lawmakers are up to. So for all the voters in Kentucky right now, who are probably congratulating themselves on the fact that they took rights away from women, how are you enjoying that poverty you're living with? How are you enjoying all the homeless kids you have in your state? This is your priority? This is what you're proud of? This is what you want? Let's take a little look at this video compilation of what Kentucky looks like.
Poverty has had a persistent grip on eastern Kentucky for generations. Its residents are poorer and less educated than any other region of Appalachia. And the impact on health is unmistakable. Life expectancy there is 5 years shorter than the rest of the nation.
Some of the most severe devastation has been right here in Kentucky, and paramedics who used to go days without a single overdose are now lucky if they go just a few hours.
Paramedic Mary Taylor rushes to as many as 25 drug overdoses in a single day.
Thousands of people in Kentucky couch surfing, living in cars, and moving from place to place without a permanent home. And many of them are children.
Yeah, they love children so much. The wonderful lawmakers of Kentucky love children so much that they will crawl up women's uteruses and protect them in their eyes, in their minds. They don't give a damn about children. They salivate at the idea of cutting social spending programs in their state that help who? That help children. They do it over and over again. They propose it over and over again. That's what Kentucky lawmakers are. That is who they are. They don't care about a damn person, but they do want to point to something they've accomplished, right? And this is typical right-wing nonsense. They're not gonna do anything to improve anyone's life, but they love optics, they love theater, they love presenting themselves as these culture warriors that do nothing to expand liberty in America or their state. All they do is try to control people's lives. You're transgender, they wanna control your life. You're gay, they wanna control your life. You're a woman, they wanna control your life. These are the people who have somehow successfully marketed themselves as lovers of freedom when their actions show that they are the antithesis of what they say they are. And by the way, that video got into drug overdoses, right? Let's talk about that a little bit. Drug overdose deaths, for example, increased nearly 30% across the United States in 2020, but in Kentucky, they were even higher, increasing nearly 54% over the year prior. But hey, the lawmakers in Kentucky, they really do care about people's lives. They really do. They really do. That's why they seem to enjoy watching their constituents suffer in poverty. That's why they do nothing about the children who are struggling with homelessness in their state. That's why they don't seem to care much about the children dealing with hunger in their state. Who cares about any of that stuff? Kentucky also has higher than typical rates of death from diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, according to the CDC. More than 15% of all Kentuckians have multiple chronic conditions, second only to West Virginia as the highest rates in the country, according to United Health Foundation's report from 2020. But remember, they didn't want to expand Medicaid because they wanted to make a point about how they don't like Obama. They don't like the Affordable Care Act. They love protecting embryos, allegedly, but it's not even about that. This is all about winning political points with evangelicals, giving people the illusion that they're working hard and governing. They're not addressing the most important issues in their own state. Instead, all they're focusing on is taking away your freedoms if it'll make their evangelical or right-wing voters happy. And for all those right-wing voters living in poverty in states like Kentucky, again, who are celebrating taking liberty and freedom away from women over their own bodies, by the way. I hope you enjoy living 5 years shorter than most Americans. I hope you enjoy your poverty. I hope you enjoy continuing to elect losers who keep abandoning you, neglecting you, and leaving you in the dust. Congratulations, I hope you like it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.